Welcome, film geeks, to the CineFiles, your weekly film fix. And I want to today welcome our co-host, special co-host, Eric Cohen. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Unfortunately, Steve could not be here today, but Eric filled in, and we appreciate you filling in. Today we have a very interesting topic to discuss, the X-Men saga. We're going to be reviewing all three of the X-Men films, the first two directed by Bryan Singer, and the latest one directed by Brett Ratner. Anyway, before we get to that, I want to go on to the section of viewer mail. Someone actually emailed us after our last request. Isn't that amazing? Yay. Hooray! And I want to thank you, Eric Kang. Thank you for your email. It was very nice to know that you're watching, and you know, we appreciate.
I don't know about reviewing the Zuckers, man. We're gonna put that down.
I'm all for it, and I appreciate you watching, and we'll do our best to support our viewers. We'll see. Now, if you email us, which hopefully our directors thank you, you can see there. You can email us, and we'll read them, and we'll get back to you, and hopefully we'll say hello to you. Anyway.
Well, technically, we didn't read this one.
Well, yes, we did.
We gave him a shout.
I forwarded it to you. That was the one you got.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we begin, Mike brought up something very interesting since we're talking about films and, comic book type films and fantasy. One thing that really irked us recently was that Will Smith was cast and got green-lighted in I Am Legend. Come on, Mike, you got something to say about this. Let's just say this before we begin our reviews.
I'm pissed. I'm pissed, damn it. Will Smith should not be in this role. That's it. That's all. I mean, the director that did Constantine, what's his name, guys? Help me out.
Lawrence.
Yes. So he
has potential.
He has potential, and then you cast Will Smith. It's a complete studio maneuver, and it's cheap, it's tawdry, and it's wrong. And Will Smith, hopefully one of your peeps gets a hold of this, and the real fan base out there is condemning you. The only person that's not condemning this whole move is Harry Knowles, that big fat bitch on Ain't It Cool News.
Well, he smells and is in a wheelchair, and who gives a damn about his opinion? I don't give a damn about it. I sure as hell don't. But I do want to say I was very disappointed because number one is Oliver Stone and Arnold Schwarzenegger were originally supposed to direct this make this at one time.
Actually, it was Ridley Scott.
And Ridley Scott too. And Ridley Scott too. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. That was Planet of the Apes with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Ridley Scott was supposed to do this. Perfect choice after Blade Runner because of the I Am Legend.
I think
is a very visual
Schwarzenegger
film.
was. I don't know.
I could have seen him more in it than I could have. Will Smith.
Yeah, that's true.
The character is an older man who had problems in his life. His wife is gone, and Will Smith's a really young guy. It's just.
Well, considering that the two previous roles were Vincent Price and Charlton Heston, you got to wonder what they were looking for when they chose Will Smith.
And those films are The Last Man on Earth and I Am
Omega Man,
which is one of the greatest films of the 70s.
Omega Man.
I love it.
Yes.
Who wrote the script? Who wrote the remake? Because there's the actual script that you can actually download it.
I think it has there's actually quite a few writers. It's been so many revisions.
Someone specifically wrote it. I forgot who it was.
Wasn't it the guy that did X-Files, the movie? Rob, what's his name?
Rob Bowman?
Yeah, Rob.
It might be Rob Bowman.
It might be Rob Bowman. But anyway, we don't want to get too long on this subject, but let's just say it's a big disappointment, and Will Smith, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should know that people do not want you in this role.
Will
sorry.
Smith,
you're miscast.
You should be ashamed of yourself that you're accepting a paycheck from a studio. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, $20 million plus? Come on. Anyway, let's get into a real subject today, and today it's X-Men. X-Men was in development hell for many years. Many directors were attached, like Jim Cameron, and it finally got made in 2000.
Well, Richard Donner was the one that owned the film rights for,
yes, he did. And he did produce
the Inception, I guess.
And he produced it with his wife, Lauren Schuler Donner, and it got made with Bryan Singer, fresh off Apt Pupil and Usual Suspects. Let's start with you, Mike, because I know comics are your life. And how would you stack up
And that
the
makes
saga?
me seem very important at this.
Well, no, it's a movie. As you said, the X-Men are some of your favorite comics of all time.
The biggest fan.
True. I felt that at first I was very, very skeptical. Very, very skeptical. Because I wasn't sure if Bryan Singer had the chops. Of course, like any good film geek or comic book geek, they want to see the top-of-the-line guy direct it. And you want to see somebody like James Cameron. I wanted to see Richard Donner tackle it because I knew that from his Lethal Weapons, he could film action and everything, and Superman, that he could tackle something like the X-Men and really make it special. But instead, he trusted this young director, Bryan Singer, who, had Apt Pupil,
I didn't care for it.
Usual Suspects, but I was surprised. I mean, and this guy was, for somebody that was not into comic books, but then got into comic books fast once he got the green light for this movie. The first film was, I think, a success, and Although I kind of do wish that my boy Cyclops would have had a more prominent role throughout these films, and that's something that we'll go on and discuss later. But I think Luke Wilson would have been a better Cyclops. He was actually offered the role, but he had to take this indie piece of crap that he did with Heather Graham instead because he had committed to that.
I think James Marsden was actually pretty good because he's like that type of wooden character, you know, like the comic, because the comic book, I thought he did a decent job and he looked the part. He had the square jaw, you know what I mean? It's just,
but Cyclops is not wooden; he's stoic. There's a difference.
Okay, calm down.
Come on,
Comic book guy.
all right, comic book guy. Yes.
Let me move on to my next subject.
Go ahead, Jeff. Let's see what your impression
I
is.
used to read comic books in high school, but I hadn't read them recently. But I was skeptical when the X-Men movie came out, and I saw it, and I mean, it was a success. I didn't love it, but you know, I found it entertaining. It was a lot better than I thought it would be, and I guess my main concern when I originally saw it was how they were going to make it a little more realistic for, you know, to see grown people running around in costumes, considering how the costumes are in the comic books. But, yeah, I enjoyed the films, you know.
Well, instead of the costumes, they gave them, like, Ducati motorcycle uniforms.
Exactly. Leather outfits. I mean...
I thought they should have been extras in Cruising when I first heard about them being in leather, but I actually, it kind of works. What I don't like about the film...
Had to work in another Cruising reference, I noticed.
I can't help it. But I like... I love... It's a guilty pleasure. Sorry, guys.
Sure.
Happily married guys. Anyway... But the thing about the X-Men movies is that a lot of people complain there's a problem that there's a lot of plot holes, and Bryan Singer's even admitted that the film was over 2 hours and they had to cut a lot out. Some of these scenes are available on the DVD, not many, maybe 9 minutes.
No,
of footage.
not that much.
Not that much is available. But supposedly there's a lot of stuff that was cut out of the movie, and you can tell there's a lot of plots that don't go anywhere. And I still like the film. I think he does a very good job of establishing the X-Men universe. You know, and I think that it's well cast. I think that Hugh Jackman, who is a last-minute addition to the cast, is very good.
Who was supposed to be Dougray Scott.
Dougray Scott.
But he's perfect as Wolverine. I mean, it made his career, and deservedly so.
Even though the fans are kind of upset because Wolverine's supposed to be short,
yes,
not big and tall.
That's absolutely right. He was like 5
that
foot.
much I know.
He's correct, sir.
I do remember those from my junior high school days of Marvel cards. Believe it or not, I collected cards for a while. And I actually had a hologram Wolverine.
That's funny because my coworker also brought up the Marvel cards line that prepped him on knowing about the comic book movies. So
I learned quite a bit.
Marvel cards were just almost as influential, I think, as the comic books.
They're pretty much
strange.
They're pretty much like Cliff Notes for comic book fans. I thought I thought he did a very good job of establishing this universe. I thought Patrick Stewart was very good, very
well. He was
warm presence.
he was the accepted the main choice. Yeah. I mean, there was the idea of maybe possibly having Ben Kingsley, but
I gotta say, Patrick Stewart was just perfect. I mean, just the illustration looks like it was drawn.
But for me, really, the heart of the film is Ian McKellen.
I knew you were gonna mention that
because you know they could have gone for your typical campy villain type, but he makes it. That's why I hated the third one, which I know I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
And you're talking about the plot holes in the first one.
We can get to that.
Third one.
I don't want to give it. I want you guys to tune in. We're going to get into that because I kind of agree.
But no, I thought Ian McKellen's really the soul of the film because really the film is really about him. I mean, the opening scene is all about him in childhood in a concentration camp, and
that's all Bryan Singer's invention. We want to mention too of his making him a survivor of a prison camp. Which
no, that's not an invention. That's the actual character.
That wasn't the okay.
But the intros, there's great.
It is pretty amazing intro. I mean, I went in there expecting just a comic book movie, and there's actually some very interesting, like, serious subject matter put in there. I mean, you don't see that a comic book movie about a Nazi, prison camp, especially not a big blockbuster movie for summer audiences. I was surprised, and the ending finale on the I believe Statue of Liberty was pretty well handled by
on Liberty Island, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So basically, how would you sum it up as an actual comic in relation to other comic book films like Superman or Spider-Man?
I think it's a very good comic book film. I wasn't a big. I'm sort of a quasi comic book fan. Was never a fan of the X-Men. To tell you honestly, I never got the Wolverine thing. But I thought it was a very well-made action fantasy.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. I mean, I really liked that it was handled differently and not like still comic book. It was.
And I liked the leather. And I could see why they were doing that because, you know, they did it like the original costumes of the comic books. It would look kind of silly.
I would agree with you because I mean, can you imagine these people trying to blend in the dark or hide? You know, you can't hide in yellow spandex. You know, in fact, they make a joke about it in the movie, I believe. Mike, did you like the serious tone too, instead of it not being kind of goofy?
I absolutely loved it. I mean, I don't want something like the X-Men being camped up because it's dealing with a very serious subject in the notion that you do have people that are different than other people and how they deal with it, how they get together, how they educate themselves, how they train themselves to fight people or other mutants that maybe are not going to have such a have more of a dispassionate look at the human race that they're competing with or whatever in the evolutionary race. But one thing I do want to say about the first film that I was a little annoyed with, and once again we'll go on with this later on, is the over focus of Wolverine. That's one thing. I'm a big fan of the X-Men, and what's great about the X-Men is Cyclops was always my favorite character, but each X-Men had a really great and wonderful distinct person. Yeah, their own stories, their own distinct personalities. Wolverine got a little bit too much focus on the first one. And then it just happens to get really ugly in 2 and 3 with that focus. I could never figure that out. I'm with Eric. You know, I just don't get that phenomenon.
And I think it's more because he's a fan favorite character, so it's more like giving the people what they want.
Right.
Yeah, they see him as like the most interesting character with the most mainstream appeal. You know, and one thing I didn't like about the movie is how they just have this whole backstory with him, and it's just throughout the entire movie. You know, and it does take away.
That's 2.
Yeah, I mean, it continues from 1, though. You're like, where am I from? Who am I? And then you see that in 2.
You get a little bit in 1.
You get little pieces of it, and it's kind of...
His intro, though, is great.
It is a good, with the bar fight.
Yeah, the bar fight,
That's great.
and then the accident.
The relationship with him and Rogue is nicely established, too, I think.
Yeah, I did.
And the two actors, Anna Paquin and Hugh Jackman, had great chemistry, I thought.
I really like that aspect. So, Jeff, what do you think overall is the first X-Men movie?
The first X-Men movie was entertaining. It was one of the better ones, but yeah, I had no...
Better comic book movies or better...
No, it was one of the better comic book movies. Right. But, you know, I really have no overall complaints about it. You know,
special effects, very good.
Very good special effects. And
Halle Berry didn't get much to do in the first one.
No, decent storm, though. Decent storm. But anyway, I thought it was a decent film. It had some problems, but overall, it was a pretty interesting comic book film. Very unique and different than the other ones that you saw at the time. It didn't really copy from other movies, and I really liked that.
The best scene in the film, though, when they introduce the 2 villains, Sabretooth and I think Toad, and then they bring Cyclops and Storm in.
I love those
That
two
whole
villains.
introduction in the snowy, off the road, you know, the accident Wolverine goes through the plate glass. You know, Wolverine, Cyclops blast Sabretooth, you know, across the snow. That whole scene is a perfect scene.
I love those villains.
Setup.
I love those villains, and you know, I thought they were very interesting. Unfortunately, you know, we won't get into why. You know, they're not in the other ones. Anyway, after X-Men came out, it became an even bigger hit on video, and they spent a lot more money on the sequel, which came out in 2003. Again, it was directed by Bryan Singer and reunited most of the cast to the film. And it actually continued the story and added some interesting twists, and it continued with, I guess, Wolverine's backstory and really explained a lot of where he was from and who he was. And it did even better than the first one.
Let me say this, that the story, the script itself, is a combination of 2 things. It's based on a graphic novel that the X-Men came out with called God Loves, Man Kills. Mm-hmm. And it's a blend of also the Weapon X storyline that was briefly covered in like a limited series about Wolverine's metamorphosis into the character of Logan, into the superhero known as Wolverine. So you blend those 2 stories and a little bit of other like Wolverine characters that was not in the X-Men, like Lady Deathstrike. That's a Wolverine character. So it took these 2 stories and merged them together. But once again, even X-Men 2, as good as it was, once again, it became Wolverine and his amazing friends. That's what I felt like. It's a good movie. It's just too Wolverine heavy.
What did you think, Eric? Did you like the Wolverine backstory, or did you think it distracted from the other interesting characters in the movie?
Well, speaking as not a fan of the comic books, and therefore not as well aware of, you know, the importance of certain characters over other characters.
And you're non-biased too, which I like.
You're right. I didn't mind that. Again, to talk about the second one, you have to go into the third one, because I thought like a lot of potential was set up in the second one. I thought the second one was actually a better film than the first one.
I agree. I think
it was
of the
tighter.
trilogy,
I thought the characters were better fleshed out. I would say that while I agree that Wolverine gets a lot of attention, I thought in the second one it felt more like an ensemble. Even Halle Berry's hair looked better.
They actually had more money.
That's true.
Nightcrawler was very good.
Nightcrawler
He was terrific.
was a
Alan
great
Cumming.
character, Alan Cumming, you know, and Brian Cox.
Brian Cox, I'm glad you
I
mentioned
love
him.
Brian Cox.
And I loved Bruce Davidson. And
Bruce Davis, that was great, and it was classy that they cast him too.
it was great. It was great to see
Not
him.
used enough.
And I loved how Brian Cox was just so sleazy, but yet he made this character kind of unique. I mean, he just wasn't his total sleazeball. He had an interesting backstory.
And what was also good about it is that what limited knowledge I have of the comic book series is that, you know, the whole Magneto side of things versus the whole Xavier side of things, there's this sort of fine line as to who's good and who's bad. And the whole fact that they all kind of teamed up together. I mean, my favorite scene actually in the movie isn't even an action scene. It's when Mystique and Magneto are sitting in the transport, or I forgot what it was. It wasn't the plane. Was it the plane?
The
Yeah,
Blackbird,
I
the
think it was.
Blackbird.
and they just make that like little comment to Rogue, and just says, "I love what you've done to your hair." It's just like a little funny kind of quirky moment.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was more. The reason I enjoyed the second one is I thought it was better paced, it was tighter script, and the action scenes were terrific. There's this one, of course, which sets up the sequel, which, of course, like you said, completely wasted, with, forgive me, Phoenix and the plane trying to save everybody on a plane in the water. I thought that was really well done. And
She wasn't Phoenix yet.
Nope, sorry, not Phoenix. Please forgive me.
Jean Grey.
Thank you, Jean Grey. Forgive me, Jean Grey. And I thought that's actually something I forgot to mention. I really like Frankie Jensen in those films. I think she's very good and is very likable, has a lot of sex appeal, and I really thought she was very authoritative in the movies. And she really does a great job at the end with the plane. I mean, what did you think, Jeff? Did you like these action scenes?
Well, I liked X-Men 2 a lot more than I liked the original X-Men movie. I just felt everything was tighter. I especially loved the opening scene with Nightcrawler.
That was terrific.
I thought that was a great action sequence. I have like trivial problems with it. Like, one of my favorite characters is Iceman, and to me, in this film, even though they give him a backstory, he also, to me, seems like a pussy. To tell you the truth.
Bobby Drake, right?
And, you know, in the comic books, you know, when I used to read them, you know, he was more of a jokey kind of, you know, more of a comedic character, but he had a serious side too. But the way the movie makes it, it seems like he's too busy trying to romance or too busy down in the dumps, afraid to use his powers. And even though they give us a reason why he might be a little afraid to use his powers, he just totally, to me, I just didn't like
They
his
neutered
character.
him as well.
Exactly.
I felt they made him a really dumb character, and Iceman's a smart type personality. I felt he was like Keith Partridge on the Partridge Family. Like he's just not a very bright guy, and this is a guy who should be very bright, because he's gone to the gifted schools.
He is the wisecracker because when.
But he had smart quips.
Well, I mean, he's the smart aleck.
Yeah.
But when you have the original X-Men, it was Cyclops was the leader, Beast was the brain. Warren Worthington, Angel, who appears in the third one, is supposed to be the rich
Aristocrat.
Yeah, the aristocrat type character. You had Jean Grey, who was the girl that everyone was vying for, and then you had Bobby Drake, Iceman, who was the smartass.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also liked basically all the performances. I mean, except one. There was one performance in the movie I didn't really care for, and that was Kelly who played the woman with the
Lady
finger.
Deathstrike.
Yeah, I thought she was very weak, and that was a problem. Is that you didn't have that many.
It was an interesting character because what they were trying for was a female Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked her character, and I thought she was perfectly cast in that. And I thought I liked that a lot, actually.
I don't know. I didn't think that as a mutant she was interesting. But anyway, we've got to wrap this up because
Once again, but I just want to bring this up. It's very petty, I know, but my favorite character, Cyclops, once again gets a short shrift. They show him up at the beginning, have Professor X, and then have Lady Deathstrike take him right out. But once again, the best scene was probably the plastic prison.
I like that quite. I love that brilliant setup. I thought it's the best of the series actually, and it had some problems, but it is the best of the series. All right, we don't have much time left, so let's get to the third one. After this one came out, to X-Men 2, it was time for a sequel, and even more money put into it because it did well on video again. And in the theater.
But Mr. Singer couldn't come along for the ride.
Singer was on board for quite a while, but then he left to do his dream project, the long-delayed Superman Returns, which was a huge project for years. Nicolas Cage was attached with Tim Burton. And so he left to do that project, and
Well, I mean, a Superman thing that went through.
yeah, many
MCG
people,
and
many people.
Brett
But
Ratner,
he
ironically
decided-
enough.
Screenplay.
And ironically, it was supposed to go with Brett Ratner, who in turn took the post after Matt Vaughn was originally supposed to direct of Layer Cake fame.
Which would have been a wonderful real attempt.
I
but he
rather
this-
had that.
Yeah, you can tell when you watch a film like Layer Cake, you can tell that this is a very, very talented guy. And to see him kind of bug out and have a nervous breakdown and have to get off the show because he was overwhelmed with the scope of this
It's
film.
a very big film for a not, like a sophomore director, But this film, unfortunately, when Bryan Singer left, he took all of his talent with him. Basically, he took his writers, he took his editor, and his composer.
No. Simon Kinberg and Zach Penn, I believe, did work on.
They
the
did some
second
work,
one.
but he took the real writer. No, they didn't.
Tom, his
Zach
partner.
Penn is left, and then they had these two other guys. Or I believe his writers did
Yeah, his
leave.
producing partner from X-Men, Tom something or other.
Well, they lost a lot of the creative team behind X-Men 3, that's for sure. And then they got
You mean X-Men 2?
Yes, X-Men 2. And unfortunately, the problem is that the film doesn't. It's not very good. I didn't care for it as much. Let's see now. Where can we begin with this? Bryan Singer actually is one thing I want to mention. Bryan Singer said he would have waited if they could wait to make the film, but they couldn't.
Well, they rushed it. I think the history of the film is that they want to rush it out by a certain date, summer release date, and that's why. I mean, the film feels like
It feels
it's
rushed.
unfinished.
It does feel rushed and
And
unfinished.
there's continuity errors. I mean,
Everywhere.
there's everything, and
Well,
characters. Well, going back to like the
list
first
a few of these continuity.
Go ahead.
continuity
please do.
errors.
Please do.
Okay,
Take
there's
the
that
shot.
whole scene. Logic errors, continuity errors. There's that whole scene in front of Jean Grey's house where they all return. Not the first scene, the second scene. Okay, and you have Magneto's team hang out in front of the house. They've been instructed, do not let the good guys into the house, whatever you do. Well, they get in a fight, and what's the first thing Juggernaut does? He throws Wolverine into the house. Yeah. Then the house has this big, it's lifted up, and it gets slammed down into the ground. I swear to God, Wolverine was in the house when it slammed down. Somehow he runs into the house after it's slammed down. The floorboards look great. The chair isn't out of place. No attention to detail. There's that scene when they're bringing the Golden Gate Bridge across to Alcatraz, and that's a beautiful special effect, by the way. Probably the best scene in the movie. And suddenly it's night.
Yeah, you're right about that.
was
That's
a
right.
big problem.
There's another thing I want to mention in this film that really irked me. Now, people who have not seen the film.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
There's
alert.
going to be a
Turn
lot of
away.
spoilers here, people.
When you get back to me,
I'll
you will hear
spoil
spoiler.
it.
Anyway,
Screw
there's
you.
a
You
scene.
need to see it.
There's a scene in the movie where it drives me absolutely apeshit. Okay, they make the whole movie concerns a toxin that will make mutants normal. Okay, and he wants to get Magneto, so he gets Magneto with this thing, and he makes him a normal human being. All right. Then you have Jean Grey, aka Phoenix, who is the woman he loves. Wolverine loves this woman. Instead of injecting her with this stuff that could probably turn her to human, he kills her. Why would he do that if he loves her so much? That is so stupid. You know what I'm saying? Because if he made her a normal human being, she wouldn't be this Phoenix character.
Well, that's a good point.
Well,
Yeah,
why
I didn't
does
think about
why
that.
does Rogue
get on
lose her
that.
powers and go back to the school for gifted youngsters? She has no more powers, so.
But you see, that's the problem with the film. And another problem with the film is they set up concepts or ideas that never follow through on.
Exactly.
I know. I mean, again, spoiler alert, but who cares? We hate this film. In this, they set up this whole thing when Xavier talks about the morality between transferring your mind to another person's mind and all that stuff. And there's that whole scene where again Jean Grey's got the house lifted and he's lifted up. And he smiles at Wolverine before he gets totally obliterated. And you think, okay, he's probably transferred his mind to Wolverine or to Jean Grey.
Yeah, but how?
But they
how did
drop
he-
that.
yeah.
But you find out, and you're
After
not
the
going to know
credits.
this until
After
you
the
stay
credits.
until the end of the credits, and you don't do that in a film
No,
because a lot of people leave during the credits.
I did.
So a lot
I
of
was
people
bored.
didn't
I
know
did.
that there's this little sort of Easter egg
know.
thing at the end when it turned out that he transferred his mind into.
This comment.
And how the hell could he do
Right.
that? From he has done that person have to be
I
near
mean, why
him?
that character? Why not
Exactly.
Jean Grey? Save Jean Grey. Why not Wolverine for that matter?
Why kill off the leader of the X-Men, Cyclops? Why just kill him off just for really no reason?
Yeah, he
other
dies unceremoniously. Mystique
Completely
goes
wasted.
back to being human
than Rogue loses her
unceremoniously.
Completely
powers,
wasted. Completely wasted.
After all the great work they
kill-
did into building up these characters in the first two films.
And they skewed it more towards a younger audience because we spend more time with a younger X-Men.
Kitty Pryde.
Exactly, and she really has nothing really to do. Colossus comes out of nowhere.
And Juggernaut. I'm Juggernaut, bitch. I mean, that was so stupid. You know, and the thing.
I actually liked Vinnie Jones as
I like
Juggernaut.
him, but it was
he had a
stupid
very
as-
strange helmet. He looked
stupid.
like a.
And his
he
chest.
looked like he should be on.
But was that
He-Man
his
and
real
a-
body, or
No.
was that
No, that was-
because
that was
like
a
even
fake
like
body.
all like the fake stuff looked really fake in this film. That's the thing that got me. Like the styles looked worse.
Yeah, the
Wolverine's
was
sideburns.
hair
distracted
was
by Wolverine's
horrible. His hair was a
Storm-
mess.
But Halle Berry had a better wig.
We got. I actually
She had a
one thing.
better
We only
wig.
have
and
one.
she had more lines.
We only have like a minute left, so I want to wrap
Wait,
this up.
and let's Jeff, we need your opinion on this.
X-Men 3, I thought was barely passable, and I use that term loosely. I mean, it showed everything that's wrong with Ratner's direction. Models being X-Men all of a sudden, you know, I guess, what's his name, Magneto's
I don't know.
guy.
Danielle Ramirez is Callisto. She's pretty freaking hot.
She's pretty, but what does she really have to do?
She doesn't
Eh.
have super speed,
One
by
good
the way.
thing
They made her
though,
into the
surprisingly
Flash.
good Kelsey Grammer.
He is very
Yeah,
good.
so that was
That was
surprising.
a surprise.
Well, I want to wrap this up because we got like less than a minute.
But I will say, Simon Kinberg and Zach Penn did such a miserable fucking job with the screenplay. It's one of the dumbest screenplays of a superhero film I have ever seen, and that includes Superman 4.
Okay.
So these guys need to be.
I got to say
punched.
something. I got to say something. Okay. I got to because I've been wanting to say this for weeks.
Hurry up.
Basically, my friend and I had a theory about Brett Ratner. Why his films technically look so good but are crap. He surrounds himself with decent technicians and special effects people and cameramen. But the man is no better than your basic Ed Wood as far in the director's
I got to be
chair.
honest with you. I can't blame Ratner too much on this. I think it's the screenwriter's fault for
I think-
having such a.
I think it's the producer's fault.
I think it's his fault.
I think
because
it's,
he
a,
didn't
I think it's the studio producer's fault for rushing a film without taking the time it needed to be made.
Anyway, until next
See,
week.
so what we're
thank
doing
you.
is we're passing the blame. We're sharing it.
Avoid. Good night. Okay, good.
I like that. Avoid. You got to wonder what they were looking for when they chose Will Smith.
And those films are The Last Man on Earth and I Am
Omega
Man,
Man.
which is one of the greatest films of the 70s.
Omega Man.
I love it.
Yes.
Who wrote the script? Who wrote the remake? Because there's the actual script that you can actually download it.
I think it has there's actually quite a few writers. It's been so many
There's
revisions.
someone specifically wrote it. I forgot who it was.
Wasn't it the guy that did X-Files, the movie? Rob, what's his name?
Rob Bowman?
Yeah,
It
Rob.
might be Rob Bowman.
It might be Rob Bowman. But anyway, we don't want to get too long on this subject, but let's just say it's a big disappointment. And Will Smith, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should know that people do not want you in this role. I'm
Will
sorry.
Smith,
You're miscast.
You should be ashamed of yourself that you're accepting a paycheck from a studio. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, $20 million plus? Come on. Anyway, let's get into a real subject today, and today it's X-Men. X-Men was in development hell for many years. Many directors were attached, like Jim Cameron, and it finally got...
Smith, hopefully one of your peeps gets a hold of this, and the real fan base out there is condemning you. The only person that's not condemning this whole move is Harry Knowles, that big fat bitch on Ain't It Cool News.
Well, he smells and is in a wheelchair, and who gives a damn about his opinion? I don't give a damn about it. I sure as hell don't. But I do want to say I was very disappointed because number one is Oliver Stone and Arnold Schwarzenegger were originally supposed to direct us make this at one time.
Actually, it was Ridley Scott.
And Ridley Scott too.
Yeah.
And Ridley Scott too. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. That was Planet of the Apes with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Ridley Scott was supposed to do this. Perfect choice after Blade Runner because of the I Am Legend.
I think
is a very visual
Schwarzenegger
film.
was. I don't know.
I could have seen him more in it than I could have Will Smith.
Yeah, that's true.
The character is an older man who had problems in his life. You know, his wife is gone, and Will Smith's a really young guy. You know, it's just.
Well, considering that the two previous roles were Vincent Price and Charlton Heston,
Today, welcome our special co-host, Eric Cohen. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Unfortunately, Steve could not be here today, but Eric filled in, and we appreciate you filling in. Today, we have a very interesting topic to discuss, the X-Men saga. We're going to be reviewing all three of the X-Men films, the first two directed by Bryan Singer, and the latest one directed by Brett Ratner. Anyway, before we get to that, I want to go on to the section of viewer mail. Someone actually emailed us after our last request. Isn't that amazing? Hooray! And I want to thank you, Eric Heng. Thank you for your email. It was very nice to know that you're watching, and as you know, we appreciate.
I don't know about reviewing the Zuckers, man. We're gonna put that down. On
I'm all for it, and I appreciate you watching, and we'll do our best to support our viewers. Now, if you email us, which hopefully our directors, thank you. you can see there. You can email us, and we'll read them, and we'll get back to you, and hopefully we'll say hello to you. Anyway,
Well, technically, we didn't read this one.
well, yes, we
just-
did.
we gave 'em a shout
I forwarded it to you. That was the one you got.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we begin, Mike brought up something very interesting since we're talking about films and, comic book type films and fantasy. One thing that really irked us recently was that Will Smith was cast and got greenlighted in I Am Legend. Come on, Mike, you got something to say about this. Let's just say this before we begin our reviews.
I'm pissed. I'm pissed, damn it. Will Smith should not be in this role. That's it. That's all. I mean, the director that did Constantine, what's his name, guys? Help me out.
Just Lawrence.
Yes. So
he has potential.
he has potential, and then you cast Will Smith. It's a complete studio maneuver, and it's cheap, it's tawdry, and it's wrong. And Will
Welcome, film geeks, to the CineFiles, your weekly film fix. And I want to